will these foods reverse my diabetes if I continue to ingest them? I'm assuming she's referring to the live sprouts and the foods. Please explain the impact on the pancreas.
Well, let's talk first about diabetes. There's a type 1 and a type 2. When I was a student, they used to call it adult onset diabetes, which was after 27 years old, and childhood diabetes below 27. Because we've been living so poorly in our culture and around the world today, we've had to rename them because children are collecting type 2 diabetes that used to take people until they were 60 or 70 years old of bad living to contract. Now they contracted at 8 and 10 years old. Diabetes, as you may know, is going up hundreds and hundreds of percent every decade at this point. And the plague is that 2 out of 3 people now contracting diabetes are children. With all of that said, type 1 is a totally different disorder than type 2. Type 2, I've never, ever worked with a type 2 diabetic who does what she or he should do that cannot bring about their own recovery, period. I've never seen one not recover. If they haven't recovered in a short matter, they haven't done what they're supposed to do. Now let's go over back to raw food. Raw food is a big, big, big menu with a lot of different things on it. And most people on raw food today, because you're still major addicts to sugar, think that consuming major amounts of fruit is a good thing for you. Well, let me tell you, fruit for a diabetic is like alcohol for an alcoholic. You do not want it. You may think you want it. You may desire it. You may have a hard time giving it up, but I can assure you, you do not need it, because fruit sugar is no different than white sugar as far as diabetes in the pancreas is concerned. Now let's break the word down. Diabetes, as well as low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, are blood sugar diseases. What that literally means is you have sugar in the blood rather than feeding the cell, because what sugar should be doing is feeding cells as one of the most important fuels. The 3 fuels for cells are glucose, oxygen, and fatty acids. Now let's go back again. The amount of glucose that healthy cells need, you acquire from salad, a lettuce. The problem with fruits today, even for healthy people, is they've been hybrid over the millennia so that they have 28, 29, 30, 31, 32 times more sugar than the original fruit. Now let's go back again. Look at the pancreas. 100 years ago, the only people that ate processed sugar were the elite and wealthy, about 5% of the population, and they consumed very small amounts. It would be Christmas or Hanukkah or their birthday, and they'd pull out a little bit of sugar and use it and then put it away again, lock it up. About 1 kilo or 2 pounds of sugar was consumed a year by the elite. That precluded 95% of our families, or if we were that back then, us, from eating processed sugar. Today, ironically, the poorest people consume the most sugar. Here in the United States, the average person consumes 120 to 160. The educated, 120, ill-educated, poor, 160 pounds of sugar a year. Our children, get a load of this one, consume double their weight of sugar a year until they're 16. So a 100-pound, 12-year-old child probably consumes 200 pounds of sugar a year. That little organ called the pancreas that was supposed to regulate the blood sugar, what does that mean? All the sugar that comes into the bloodstream has to go through this little pancreas. It regulates it so it becomes food for what? The cell. It broke. It broke. We don't have anyone walking around with healthy pancreases. When we find one, I speak about it for 6 weeks with my colleagues. We don't find healthy pancreases. So with that said, type 2 diabetes goes away very easy because this diet is extremely high in protein. Everyone who knows anything about blood sugar disorders knows that protein regulates it. This is the most protein-rich diet on the planet Earth. Where do you get it from? Sprouts, algae. Also, it eliminates all fats that are not fatty acids. That means saturated fats. The number one problem that causes diabetes is not sugar, it's fat, and fat surrounds a cell, smothers the cell, so the sugar cannot be used at all. The sugar now becomes what? Blood sugar. At first it causes low blood sugar, and everyone who was not born with diabetes first had hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, and one day they woke up and it went bang from 60 or 50, bang to 140 or 200. Now that's what happens. You get the second stage of low blood sugar is high blood sugar, diabetes. 100% of type 2 get well because we clean up the fat, we nourish, we put protein, which actually goes in and collects the sugars, stabilizes them, and carries it out of the body, urinary tract, fecal matter, skin, perspiration, etc. Type 1 is a little different. Type 1 are people born at birth with a totally dysfunctional pancreas, so they have type 1 diabetes, or now they contract it sometime in their life, and generally before they're 20 years old or 25 years old. With that said, the statistics we've seen over the decades, 52 years, are that out of 100% of the people with type 1 diabetes, 3 of them have the potentiality to eventually come off insulin. 4 of them will dramatically lower their insulin, and 3 of them you have very little effect with. Usually that 3 were born with it, but don't worry if you were born with it, because I've been called a liar before, seeing a number of people who were born with it that obviously had some kind of pancreatic function. So it re-engaged again, and they were able to reduce their insulin dramatically, and in a couple of cases come off it. Now, they're freak incidents. Usually people born with it have zero pancreatic function. So the pancreas, again, once you treat it right, just like any organ in the body, it's going to start to respond. It doesn't trust you now. I wouldn't trust you either after what you did and I used to do to myself. And so bottom line is you pet it long enough, it stops growling. And if you're lucky enough, it's still alive, and it starts to respond. Will it be perfect and work 100%? Never. Not if you got it that sick. But will it function well enough to make you healthy? The answer is yes.
Okay. Oh, now I understand why low blood sugar is related to high blood sugar, because, I didn't get that before. So thank you. Yeah, because I didn't even realize I had it, but when I came to the Institute when I first realized I had low blood sugar issues, and I'd actually been on a raw food diet for 2 years, eating loads of fruit, just like you said. Because a lot of the people teach it, and I thought, well, that's fun. That means I can, as long as it's raw, I can eat whatever I want, and I was having a good time, especially here in Florida where the fruit's so good.
Yeah. Well, one of the nicest experiences in my life was when we convened the very first living food leadership meetings here at Hippocrates about 4 or 5 years ago. And again, we had 8 countries represented, and my colleagues like Gabriel Cousins and Victorious have been in these meetings, and the next one will be pretty soon in the spring. And all of us cumulatively from all parts of the world who have been doing this a long time, I think we had 200 and some years of experience in that room, or on the circle table that we actually built a circular table that we're sitting at. And we all came to that conclusion about not eating a lot of fruit or any fruit at all when you're battling a disease within 20 minutes. It was the first thing. And sadly out there, as I call them, the cheerleaders or the enthusiasts that write books, half-cocked, good people, good intention, nice, mean well, but half-cocked, are still heavily addicted to sugar and really hurt people by their addictive natures and what they write about, and as if they're authorities on it, and tell people to eat 25 pounds of bananas a day and all this crazy stuff. And carrot juice is good for, we learn things, and Hippocrates learned things. One of the things that a lot of our alumni are surprised with, because 80% of our guests return here, is that we will change something once we find that what we're doing isn't as good as it should be. And people say, well, gee, you used to say that. Well, used to means used to. And if we discover that we can improve things or go to the next place or raise your health or raise everyone's health by teaching the current truth, that's what it is, because there's always a current truth. The problem with humanity, not only with health, but with everything we do, is we keep looking backward, and that makes us bang into walls because we're not looking forward.